Times my parents spoke to me, or even better, showed me what it meant to have both privilege and responsibilities.
When I just had a born, it was really important to me, and I don't like fuss, so it's much easier to do it yourself.
On his 43rd birthday, Prince William did more than mark another year of life. He quietly reshaped the very structure of the royal family. The day began like any other at Kensington Palace. Courtiers moved with calm precision, and journalists stood by for the usual birthday portrait and a polite thank you message. But then came the twist. In just a few brief lines, Prince William set off a shockwave within royal circles. Without advance notice, James, Earl of Wessex, and his sister Lady Louise Windsor were stripped of their courtesy titles. The move raised immediate questions. Why them? Was this a bold act of modernization? A step toward a leaner monarchy for a new era? Or was it something more personal? A subtle sign of deep-rooted tensions within the House of Windsor? Why single out two of the quietest, most uncontroversial figures in the entire royal roster? And perhaps the most pressing question, what does this tell us about the future king? Royal insiders hint at a much deeper story, one of strategy, legacy, and possibly hidden rifts. Tonight, we pull back the curtain on what really happened behind palace walls. By the end of this video, you'll gain insight not just into the decision itself, but also the motives, emotions, and history driving it, and what this bold shift means for the monarchy's future. Chapter 1. The birthday that changed everything. There's something uniquely magical about a June morning in London. Gentle sunlight grazes the cobbled streets. The sound of early tourists fills the air outside Kensington Palace, and inside, royal staff go about their morning duties steeped in age-old routine. But this morning carried an unfamiliar weight. Prince William was turning 43, and on the surface, everything followed the usual script. Florists fussed over the arrangements, the communications team polished a standard birthday post for social media, and a small crowd of photographers waited patiently, hoping for a rare glimpse of the future king. Yet, behind the palace's ornate facade, something was quietly brewing. Sources close to the inner circle had picked up on the shift days in advance. Unscheduled meetings running late into the night, subtle alterations to the day's itinerary, and hushed exchanges in corners between Prince William and senior advisors. The sense was clear. Something significant was about to unfold. No one, however, knew what. And then in the afternoon, the announcement arrived. No press conference, no royal address. Just a succinct, formal declaration. Effective immediately, James, Earl of Wessex, and his sister Lady Louise Windsor would no longer use their courtesy titles. The news landed with the force of a thunderclap. Neither James nor Louise had ever stirred scandal or controversy. Their roles in the royal family were quiet, dignified, and almost entirely outside the spotlight. Yet in one swift move, the identities they had carried since childhood were reshaped by royal decree. Though the statement came with King Charles's official signature, palace insiders insist this was William's doing. His call, his direction, his mark on the monarchy. What had begun as a ceremonial birthday soon morphed into a seismic shift, one that didn't just alter the paths of James and Louise, but hinted at deeper transformations looming within the royal family itself. Chapter 2. Why James Louise? For many royal watchers, the shock wasn't just about the what, it was about the who. Why were James and Louise the ones affected? Among Queen Elizabeth II's grandchildren, James and Lady Louise have always stood apart, not for controversy or fame, but for their quiet presence. Their lives, carefully protected by their parents, Prince Edward and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, unfolded far from the flashing cameras and relentless headlines that surrounded their more public cousins, William, Harry, Beatrice, and Eugenie. While the spotlight chased others, James and Louise seemed to float quietly in the background, graceful, reserved, and largely unnoticed. Now 17 and 21, respectively, James and Louise were raised with an emphasis on humility and normalcy. At royal ceremonies and family occasions, they exuded composure and grace. In their everyday lives, at home and at school, they were simply teenagers navigating a unique lineage with as much ordinariness as they could manage. That approach wasn't accidental. From the outset, Edward and Sophie were clear. They wanted their children to grow up outside the constraints of royal titles. Though Queen Elizabeth had reportedly offered James and Louise the option to be styled as prince and princess, under royal protocol, their parents declined. It was a conscious decision, one made to protect their children from the pressures of public life. Instead, James assumed the courtesy title Viscount Severn, later becoming Earl of Wessex when his father inherited the title Duke of Edinburgh. Louise remained Lady Louise Windsor, a styling both dignified and deliberately understated. They never chased publicity. Louise, known for her interests in equestrian sports, art, and royal history, often drew admiration for her quiet poise. Some even saw glimpses of the late Queen in her warmth and intelligence. She reportedly shared a deep bond with Queen Elizabeth, especially in her final years, often spending personal time at Balmoral and learning from her grandmother directly. James, even more reserved, earned praise for his manners and modesty. Though he carried his father's title, he remained firmly outside the spotlight, which is precisely what made the recent decision feel so unexpected and so unsettling. Why remove titles from two young royals who had never stirred public trouble or embarrassment? Those close to the palace suggest there's a deeper meaning behind the move. Prince William, they claim, views courtesy titles as remnants of an outdated system where titles were granted by bloodline, not by service. In his eyes, simply being royal is no longer enough to warrant a title. From this perspective, the decision wasn't personal, it was philosophical. A modern monarchy, in William's vision, must be lean, purposeful, and merit-based. But there may be more than one layer to this story. According to alternative sources, this wasn't an outright banishment. James and Louise, they say, are still part of what's being called the reserve bench, a group of lesser-known royals who may be called upon in the future should they choose to serve. Louise, in particular, is already showing signs of promise. Now studying at the University of St. Andrews, the very place where her cousin William met Catherine, she's also joined the University Officers Training Corps, earning the rank of Officer Cadet. That detail, though not widely publicized, has sparked comparisons to Queen Elizabeth's wartime service as a mechanic. Some believe William's move is strategic rather than punitive. By withdrawing their titles for now, he offers James and Louise the chance to choose their path without inherited pressure or expectation. If they one day return to public life, it will be because they chose it, not because tradition demanded it. And that leaves us with an open-ended question. Is this narrative part of a carefully crafted royal message, or is it a smokescreen, hiding deeper divisions within the family? Only time will tell. Chapter 3, William's Vision Rewriting Royal Tradition. To truly grasp why Prince William chose to make such a decisive move, especially on his birthday, you need to look at the long game he's been quietly playing for years. William has never approached his destiny as a passive observer. While many assumed he was simply waiting in the wings, those within royal circles say he's been strategically watching, listening, and learning his entire life. He observed the implosion of his parents' marriage in the full glare of the media. He witnessed the press both elevate and eviscerate his mother. He saw his brother walk away from royal duties altogether. Each chapter left an impression, and each taught him how fragile the monarchy can be if it doesn't evolve. At the heart of William's private mission are two guiding principles: relevance and respect. And to maintain both, he believes the monarchy must become leaner. This idea isn't without precedent. More than 100 years ago, during the First World War, King George V made sweeping changes to the monarchy's structure, eliminating many royal titles, cutting foreign associations, and modernizing the image of the royal family to match the needs of a nation in crisis. Prince William appears to be drawing from that same playbook, but with a 21st century update. Sources within the palace say William wants to reframe the monarchy as something sharper, more purposeful, less of a bloated institution, more of an agile, clearly defined unit. In his mind, the days of extended relatives appearing on palace balconies or accepting taxpayer-funded roles without public service are over. What he's envisioning is a working monarchy built around a smaller, more committed group, each member with a clear job and a tangible contribution to national life. And this isn't just an abstract concept, it's already being put into practice. Following Queen Elizabeth's passing, in King Charles's ascent, William began moving with quiet efficiency behind the curtain. He's reportedly built a powerful advisory network unofficially dubbed the Shadow Court, a team of savvy, modern-minded strategists who are helping him steer the institution toward its next chapter. Unlike traditional palace advisors, this inner circle includes PR professionals, modern communications experts, and progressive voices who understand the tightrope between tradition and modernity better than the old establishment ever could. As one insider allegedly put it, William's not just present at meetings anymore, he's chairing them. Already, he's scaled back on less impactful public engagements, restructured ceremonial costs, and started reassessing who within the royal family actually attends major official events. So, in context, the decision to sideline James and Louise from formal titles isn't random. It's part of a much broader recalibration. This move sends a clear and deliberate message. Titles aren't handed out as tokens of birthright. They are instruments of service. If you don't actively contribute, you don't carry the badge. It also addresses a looming issue within the monarchy, the vacuum left behind by the exits of Prince Harry and Prince Andrew. With two senior roles now unfilled, William appears more focused on forming a compact, effective group rather than trying to patch those holes with distant cousins or passive figureheads. It's a daring, perhaps even controversial strategy, one that risks straining family dynamics. But if successful, it could restore the public's confidence in an institution many have begun to question. For William, royal duty isn't about preserving nostalgia. It's about proving that the monarchy, in a changing world, can still matter and still serve. Chapter 4, Sophie's Silent Pain. While headlines swirled and speculations ran wild, one person remained quietly in the shadows. Yet her hurt, according to palace insiders, was unmistakable. Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh. To the public eye, Sophie has long embodied the perfect royal, poised, dependable, and discreet. Before stepping into royal life, she had built a career in public relations. After marrying Prince Edward, she gradually earned the late Queen Elizabeth's deep trust and respect. Over the years, she learned how to navigate the complex royal ecosystem with grace. Always present, but never overexposed. Always supportive, never controversial. Her connection with Queen Elizabeth was more than formal. It was deeply personal. They reportedly spent many weekends together at Windsor Castle, enjoying long private walks and candid conversations away from royal obligations. Those closest to the household often describe Sophie as the Queen's second daughter, a testament to their profound bond. That same deep commitment extended to her children, Lady Louise Windsor and James, Earl of Wessex. From day one, Sophie and Edward prioritized giving their children a grounded life. While protocol technically allowed them to use the titles of prince and princess, the couple chose to forgo those honors, instead adopting lesser courtesy titles. It was a deliberate decision, one that kept the door open for their children to shape their own futures without the weight of royal expectations. Sophie once candidly shared, "We try to raise them with the knowledge that they'll likely need to earn their own way." To her, this approach wasn't just about parenting, it was a protective act, a way to give them dignity and freedom in equal measure. So when the royal birthday announcement came, removing even the limited titles James and Louise held, it reportedly struck Sophie hard. True to her nature, she made no public display of emotion. No statements were issued, no interviews given, no signs of protest. But behind closed doors, insiders claim she was heartbroken, blindsided, as one source put it. What stung wasn't just the loss of titles, it was the erosion of a choice she and Edward had carefully preserved. The opportunity for James and Louise to determine their own paths had been taken from them, without warning. For Sophie, it marked more than a personal loss. It was a symbol of how much the royal landscape had shifted. The family she had devoted decades to, the one she stood by through scandal, grief, and change, was now evolving into something unfamiliar. In the warm, cohesive institution she helped hold together after Princess Diana's death seemed in some ways to be slipping away. In many respects, Sophie's silent sorrow reflects what countless royal watchers feel about the Windsor's transformation. Modernization is necessary, yes, but it's not without collateral damage. and too often that emotional cost is carried by those who never seek the spotlight. Chapter 5. A quiet rift between William and Edward. Outwardly, everything appears calm. There are no sharp words exchanged in public, no frosty stares from balconies, no explosive headlines fed by anonymous leaks or tense late-night phone calls. But according to those close to the palace, the relationship between Prince William and Prince Edward has grown increasingly strained, subtly but unmistakably. For much of his royal life, Edward was the steady hand. As the youngest child of Queen Elizabeth II, he earned a reputation for reliability and humility. Scandal never touched him. Instead, he stood by the monarchy with quiet consistency, patiently awaiting the honor his mother had long intended for him. The title of Duke of Edinburgh, once proudly held by his late father, Prince Philip. When Edward finally received the dukedom less than 2 years ago, it felt like a well-deserved reward. A quiet moment of validation after decades of loyal service. But that moment didn't last. Before he could even settle into the role, his son James lost the Earl of Wessex title traditionally associated with the position. Just like that, what was once a symbol of continuity became a source of quiet disillusionment. To many within royal circles, it felt like a betrayal of values the crown once held dear. Edward had never asked for the spotlight. He worked behind the scenes, supporting the Queen in her later years and helping Prince Philip preserve a sense of dignity amid the evolving pressures on the royal family. And yet, when it came to his own children, their place within the monarchy was stripped away with no advance warning. The contrast between Edward and William couldn't be more stark. Edward champions the old world monarchy, where kinship and tradition grant every royal a meaningful place, regardless of public image. William, on the other hand, is pushing for a leaner, more purpose-driven institution. For him, royal titles are earned through visible contribution, not inherited by default. He sees a monarchy that must modernize or risk irrelevance, and that includes trimming its roster, even at the cost of familial sentiment. Sources close to the royal household say Edward took the decision personally. While he didn't voice his displeasure openly, the mood in the aftermath was described by one insider as tense civility. Not overt conflict, but certainly not closeness. Since then, Edward has continued to fulfill his duties with professionalism. He remains present at engagements, committed to his causes, and loyal in appearance. Yet behind that composed exterior, palace watchers say a subtle distance has grown between him and the Prince of Wales. It isn't an open feud, but it's far from affection. As William assumes more influence in shaping the future of the monarchy, Edward, once the quiet cornerstone of its traditions, seems to be coming to terms with a hard truth. The royal family he committed his life to is evolving into something he barely recognizes. Chapter 6. The public fallout and media silence. If Prince William's intention was to quietly usher in a new era for the monarchy, the public response suggested otherwise. The moment the news broke, whispers turned into wildfire across gossip sites and social media. Speculation moved fast and wildly. Initially, the reaction from the public was one of puzzlement. James and Louise weren't headline makers. On the contrary, many admired the siblings for their discretion, for upholding a quiet grace that reminded people of what the royals used to stand for. But as the story took root, opinions began to split sharply. For many younger Britons, particularly Gen Z and millennials, the move made perfect sense. William enjoys enormous support from this demographic, and his vision of a slimmed-down monarchy aligned with their modern values. To them, titles should be earned through action, not simply inherited at birth. In their eyes, it was time for a royal house that reflected service and accountability, not just tradition and lineage. Allowing James and Louise to hold on to titles without taking on royal responsibilities felt increasingly unjustifiable. However, older generations weren't so quick to embrace the change. For those who grew up during Queen Elizabeth II's reign, the royal family represented continuity, honor, and a stable thread through turbulent times. To them, stripping titles from Edward's children felt needlessly harsh, a decision made with strategy but lacking sentiment. Much of the sympathy centered around Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh. She was widely regarded as a devoted mother and one of the most grounded figures in the royal family. Many felt she had been caught in the crossfire of a decision that disregarded her years of loyalty. And then there was the curious silence. Despite the social media uproar, major media outlets were conspicuously quiet. No headlines in the Daily Mail. No coverage from BBC News. None of the usual royal correspondents seemed willing to touch the story. According to insiders, this wasn't by chance. News editors allegedly chose to steer clear of the controversy, perhaps out of deference to Kensington Palace, or perhaps out of fear of stoking division at a delicate moment. Supporters of William called him a forward-thinking leader, unafraid to make difficult decisions in pursuit of a monarchy that could survive the modern age. Critics, meanwhile, accused him of sacrificing his own family members in a calculated bid to appear progressive and stay popular with younger generations. One viral comment summed up the debate perfectly. He's not wrong, but he's not right either. Reform shouldn't come at the cost of compassion. Throughout the storm, Kensington Palace remained officially silent. No statements, no clarification. But behind the scenes, sources say the palace's communications team was working overtime to manage the reaction and steer public attention elsewhere. What was meant to be a simple birthday announcement had turned into something far larger. A cultural flashpoint, a media mystery, and perhaps most significantly, a sign that the monarchy's next chapter won't be written quietly. Chapter 7. The Road Ahead. Though the initial shock of the title removal has subsided, its ripple effects are only just beginning to take shape. For James and Louise, the future is now filled with ambiguity. Stripped of their courtesy titles, they've been pushed further into the realm of private life. On paper, this grants them the freedom to chart their own paths, careers, relationships, ambitions, without the ever-present gaze of royal expectations. To some, this is a gift in disguise. Louise, in particular, is already stepping into her independence. Studying English literature at university, she's been quietly building a life on her own terms. She famously turned down the title of princess when she turned 18, expressing a desire for normalcy. Yet palace watchers suspect her story with the monarchy isn't over just yet. As one insider allegedly remarked, Louise isn't out of the picture. William knows she could be an asset when the time comes. James, still just 17, is at a pivotal juncture. Even more low-key than his sister, he's now in the awkward position of having been raised with a title he no longer holds. Once known as the Earl of Wessex, he reportedly feels unmoored, still a Windsor by blood, but no longer marked by a formal role. But this is about more than just two young royals. The decision has sparked deeper questions about the rest of the extended royal family. Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, daughters of Prince Andrew, still retain their titles for now. But as the crown continues reshaping its public image, it's unclear how long that will last. Their children may be next in the line of scrutiny. Insiders suggest this wasn't an isolated move. Instead, it fits into a larger, deliberate transformation of the monarchy's structure. The strategy seems focused. Only those who serve the institution in a public capacity and are in direct succession will carry formal titles and receive public support. This shift also comes in the long shadow of Princes Harry and Andrew. Both have stepped away or been removed from frontline royal duties, leaving William with fewer working royals to uphold the family's obligations. The system is being trimmed, but the workload remains. That's where the next generation comes in. William is said to view his own children and a small circle of dependable relatives like Louise as the future backbone of the monarchy. They're not just heirs, they're his contingency plan. For now, the royal family finds itself walking a fine line, balancing centuries of tradition with a growing demand for relevance and reform. Whether William's calculated vision leads to a stronger, more focused institution or risks alienating parts of the family is a question still without an answer. But what's clear is that the very definition of royalty is shifting. As one royal historian aptly stated, William has drawn his line in the sand. Whether the rest of the family follows, it's still too early to say. What started as an ordinary summer morning at Kensington Palace quickly evolved into something far more significant, a bold signal from the future king that he's no longer content to remain in the background. At 43, Prince William made a move that caught many off guard. By reshuffling titles within the royal family, he didn't just execute a strategic adjustment, he offered a glimpse into the monarchy he's preparing to lead. Leaner, more focused, and, in his vision, more resilient. For James and Louise, this isn't the end of their story. It's a new beginning, filled with uncertainty. Their titles may be gone, but their lineage remains. Louise, already demonstrating a quiet sense of duty through her military involvement, may yet find herself stepping back into public service. And James, still navigating adolescence, now faces the challenge of defining his role in a royal structure that's steadily narrowing. For their parents, Sophie and Edward, the change brings a quiet sorrow, a reminder that years of loyalty and dedication don't necessarily earn you a voice in shaping what's to come. As for William, this marks another move in his careful balancing act, walking the line between the weight of royal tradition and the demands of a modern institution. The British monarchy has always evolved to endure, but rarely has that evolution felt so intimate or so exposed.